The Galactic Sovereignty Council had one rule, a very simple, very ancient, and very sacred rule. Before any conquest, send a scout. Observe the planet. Count the weapons. Measure the fear. Then, and only then, decide whether invasion is wise. Commander Grauth of the Sovereignty Fleet was a decorated officer. 14 planets had already fallen under the Council's flag. 14 civilizations had looked up at his ships and chosen the sensible option. They trembled. They surrendered. They handed over their resources with the desperate politeness of beings who wanted very much to continue breathing. Grauth was excellent at his job, which was why, when he pointed his long-range scanners at the third planet of a small, ordinary solar system, he assumed this would become planet number 15. Orin, he called across the bridge without looking up from his data feed. Tell me about the planet. Lieutenant Orin was a thin, four-armed officer with the permanent nervous energy of someone who had once made a filing mistake and never emotionally recovered from it. He tapped the console with two hands while the other two clutched a data tablet, like a survival tool. Designation, Sol 3, Orin read after adjusting his translator earpiece. Single moon, mostly water. One dominant intelligent species. Bipedal. Warm-blooded. No recorded interstellar travel. No energy signatures above Class 2. He paused. They call it Earth. Grauth repeated the name slowly. Earth. Yes, sir. Just Earth. Yes, sir. Grauth leaned back in his command chair with the satisfied posture of someone who believed victory was already decided. No grand planetary title. No declaration of military dominance. No defensive grid broadcasting warnings across the galaxy. None, sir. Their communications beyond atmosphere are mostly entertainment programs. And something called a podcast. What is a podcast? Grauth asked. Orin checked his database. One creature speaking for extended periods into a small device, usually about personal problems and food recommendations. Grauth stared silently. Then he laughed. It was the kind of laugh that begins deep in the chest and does not apologize on the way out. Half the bridge crew joined him. Because when the commander laughs, you laugh too, especially if you prefer warm ships over frozen observation stations orbiting dead stars. Bring us closer to observation range, Grauth said, wiping moisture from his secondary eyelids. I want to see these creatures before we formally introduce ourselves. The fleet moved forward quietly, with the casual arrogance of beings who had never considered that surrounding silence might not be emptiness. It might be patience. The observation screens filled with Earth. Orin spoke with increasing confusion. They are arguing, he said, watching a live feed from a drone probe above a crowded marketplace. About the price of fruit. Primitive resource dispute, Grauth nodded confidently. One of them is recording the argument on a handheld device. Documentation, Grauth said. He is laughing while recording. Grauth blinked. Is the argument not serious? They appear to find it entertaining. The feed changed. A coastal city. Massive mechanical structures were rising from the ground. Grauth leaned forward slightly. What are those? Construction equipment, sir. They are building something. What? Based on intercepted blueprints, a shopping center. Grauth relaxed. Of course they are. But then Probe 7 transmitted something else. A military installation hidden within mountain terrain. Outside it, humans were training. Not ceremonial training. Not performance drills. No cameras. No audience. Just repetition. Precision. The quiet mechanical discipline of a species preparing for something it fully expected to arrive. One soldier stopped, looked upward at the sky with calm, dark eyes, lit a small flame to warm a drink, then returned to work. Grauth watched for a long time without speaking. Sir, Orin asked cautiously. Run the cultural database again, Grauth said quietly. Full historical scan. Every recorded war. Every outcome. Orin's 4 hands became very still. Sir, all of them. Every single one. The database loaded. The numbers appeared. Grauth read them. Then read them again. Because surely there must have been a translation error. Surely a species that produced podcasts and fruit arguments could not have spent that many centuries doing exactly this. Surely a planet that never once announced its strength could possess this much of it quietly waiting in reserve. The soldier in the field finished his drink, crushed the container in one bare hand without looking at it, and walked back to his unit. Grauth remained silent for a very long time. Outside, Earth rotated slowly in darkness, unconcerned, unannounced, waiting for nothing, because it had already decided that whatever came would be handled. It always had. The war room aboard Grauth's flagship was called the Certainty Chamber. It had been named by a council interior designer, an individual of immense confidence and very limited foresight. The name had always felt appropriate. Until now. Now it felt like a joke no one found amusing. Grauth stood at the center of the circular chamber, surrounded by senior officers, all staring at the same historical data projected across the main display. The room was silent, the kind of silence with weight, the kind that presses against walls and asks questions no one wants to answer. General Voss, a broad, gray-skinned officer who had personally overseen the conquest of 3 ocean worlds and had not looked uncertain in 40 years of service, was now visibly uncertain. They fought each other, Voss said slowly, pointing at the data. Constantly. Yes, Grauth replied. For thousands of years. Yes. And they never stopped developing weapons during that time. No, Grauth said. They did not. Even while recovering from previous conflicts? Especially then. Voss absorbed this the way one examines a stone turned over in a garden, unsure whether discovering what lies beneath is wise. So every war they fought, he said carefully, was essentially a weapons development program with casualties. Grauth pointed at him. There it is. Lieutenant Oren raised one of his 4 hands from the corner of the room, wearing the quiet misery of someone who had already completed the calculations and disliked the outcome. Sir, I pulled additional cultural data, specifically regarding their entertainment. Proceed. Their most popular stories, Oren began, bringing up a translated list, feature scenarios in which their planet is attacked by a superior external force. He looked up. In every version of that story, the humans win. Silence. Every version? Voss asked. Every major one, sir. For over a century, they have been mentally rehearsing this scenario. Invasion from outside. Overwhelming odds. Earth victorious. Oren set the tablet down with the deliberate care of someone placing unstable material on a table. They've been looking forward to this. Grauth pressed 2 fingers against the bridge of his nasal structure. The closest his species came to closing their eyes and counting to 10. Pull up the weapons inventory again. The display shifted. Numbers. Classifications. Stockpiles. It was gently phrased extensive. Less gently phrased. It was a catastrophic miscalculation by every analyst who had ever labeled Earth primitive. That device, Voss said, pointing to a classification. The one they haven't used in combat since their second global conflict. Yes, they kept manufacturing it. They produced thousands more. Why? Grauth met his gaze. Because they could. Voss lowered himself into his chair with the slow heaviness of a creature whose legs had decided standing was no longer defensible. Outside the flagship, Probe 7 continued transmitting. It had drifted lower over Earth's surface, low enough to capture audio from the mountain installation. A human officer addressed a gathered unit. The translation arrived in fragments, but the meaning was unmistakable. She spoke about patience, about how aggression announces itself. Aggression allows adjustment. The most dangerous weapon, she told them, was not something carried in hand. It was the ability to wait without shrinking, to carry readiness without displaying it. A soldier in the back row cracked a joke. The unit laughed. She allowed it. Then, calmly, without emphasis, without drama, she said, "Back to work." They returned instantly. No ceremony, no hesitation. Grauth muted the audio feed. He walked back to his command chair and sat. He studied the planet turning quietly below. Blue, green, brown. A world that had never once broadcast a warning into the galaxy. A world that had never needed to. Oren, sir, draft a message to the council. Oren's stylus hovered. What shall I write, sir? Grauth looked at Earth one final time. At its oceans, its mountains, It's billions of beings arguing over fruit prices, recording one another laughing, watching fictional invasions in which fleets like has made the wrong decision. Inform them, Grauth said. That Sol 3 is already claimed. Orin blinked. By whom, sir? By the people who live on it. He turned away from the display and informed them that those people are fully aware of that fact, which is more than we were. A pause moved across the bridge. Officers exchanged glances. No one laughed. No one objected. 14 conquests between them, and not one officer felt inclined to challenge this decision. Set course for council space, Grauth ordered. Standard speed. He paused. And someone determine what a podcast is. I would prefer to understand these people before I ever risk underestimating them again. The fleet turned. Slowly, quietly, with considerably more respect than it had arrived with. It withdrew from the small, unremarkable solar system and its third, deeply remarkable planet. Earth did not watch them leave. It was busy. It was always busy. There were structures to build, arguments to have, jokes to tell, soldiers training in mountain fields who required no audience. The stars were filled with civilizations that announced their power loudly and often. Earth never saw the necessity. It did not need to. It never had. Earth did not need to prove anything. It never had to.